So I believe we can start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this climate talking partnership with our wonderful partners at the Regenerative Viticultural Foundation, where we'll be discussing cover crop management. Today, we count on Becky Sykes from the Regenerative Viticultural Foundation to host and moderate this talk, and on Fred Leumer from Austria, Leumer, from Sveva Cernia from Morancinci, from Italy, and Jordan Lundberg from Coastal Vineyard Care Associates in the US. So thank you, Fred, Sveva, and Jordan for being with us today. Thank you also to everyone on the other side of the screen, wherever you are in the world. Before we get started, and as usual, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the Porto Protocol, especially for those of you who may be new to us. We are the Wines Industry Global Climate Action Network. Everything we do is about sharing solutions, experiences, and very practical knowledge like we'll be doing here today. Our main goal is to foster peer-to-peer learning to accelerate the industry's response to climate change, and we believe in action rather than perfection. Our community spans over 250 companies from across the whole wine world, from growers and producers to universities, packaging companies and designers and retailers and importers. All these companies come in all shapes and sizes and are at different stages of their climate journey. What they have in common, though, is a willingness to share what they've learned, both the successes and the challenges. And so by working together and sharing knowledge, we can become a bigger, faster impact on climate change. So if you're not already a part of the Porto Protocol community, we'd love for you to join, and we're just a click away. But this is just one of the first invites we have for you today. So the next one is to let you know about one of the projects we have and that might come your way if you are in Europe. And it's really relevant given the topic we are discussing here today. It's the Living Vineyards Tour. It is a Porto Protocol initiative in partnership with Piscines Ranch and the No Regrets Initiative. It brings our existing collaborative network called the Living Vineyards into the field. It's a hands-on European tour focused on ecosystems restoration and biodiversity in vineyards, where wine producers will learn from each other directly in the landscapes they steward. It is led by Kelly Melville from Piscines Ranch from California, my colleague Christina that is in the back office, you can't see her. And it's co-hosted by a series of members of ours across Europe. So we'll span 7 countries featuring 12 practical workshops shaped by each vineyard's unique conditions. And additional guest experts will join along the way. So it will be dozens of people from producers, viticulturists, and researchers that will come together throughout this tour. And in essence, this is a traveling community of practice, turning shared knowledge into real-world action. Check out our website, our social media, or drop us an email if you want to be invited to one of these workshops. And by coincidence or not, in fact, one of the workshops will take place at Loimers on the 29th of November. And another of these stops is just handy for this talk because it will happen in the UK with the Regenerative Viticulture Foundation, where they'll be presenting a project that I would love Becky to take a second before we go into the talk, because again, it's really relevant and it's another invitation to you, which is the One Block Challenge. So Becky, do you want to take a second before introducing the rest of our guests and starting the talk to explain what the One Block Challenge is, please? And from here, the stage is yours.
Wonderful. Always fantastic to be on a webinar with the Porto Protocol. We love collaborating with the Porto Protocol. It's fantastic. We're on a very much the same mission, it has to be said. So the Living Vineyards tour that they are organizing has been an absolutely huge undertaking. So it's really great to see that it's actually happening from just this very small idea they had. It suddenly is really actually happening, and Kelly Mulville is coming over, and all these amazing events are going to happen in November. So yes, one of them is part with us on our launch, not our launch, the first field day of our One Block Challenge, which is this initiative we've got going on that actually Geordie has been helping us with in California. And I was going to just share a slide about it. So I'm going to share my screen now and see what happens. I'm hoping I'm now sharing with the picture of the challenge. So we have this initiative because we know that it can be quite daunting, a little bit scary to try something new. And when you've got the same, everyone's got problems with climate change and building resilience to climate change and all these things. And we know that if we bring farmers together in a supportive environment, then they can help each other, they can benefit from and trying things for a little bit longer than they have. And we started this in Paso Robles, which is where Geordie is from, in January with I think we started just with about 20 growers. It's now 46 producers. They represent more than 50% of the vine hectarage in Paso Robles. And between them, they have just done this huge collective order of cover crop seeds, supported by Geordie to help them decide what cover crop seeds go for, because a lot of these cover crop seeds have to come from a long way away. So they shared on all that transportation cost. They brought them all over by truck. Each participant had a pallet that they came and collected with their cover crop seeds on. A lot of them seeded a bigger proportion of the vineyard than just their one block challenge. So it's been a really exciting moment. But the idea is they choose a block, small, big, can be any size they want, that they're going to dedicate to the challenge for at least a year. And then they start trialing one or two regenerative practices, what we call regenerative practices, things like cover cropping, which we're going to talk about today, or bringing in compost. I think in Paso Robles, they have stopped herbicides to vine. And it's been really exciting. So we've also launched it in South Africa. They just have in the UK, New Zealand, Texas, which is really exciting. And now we're just announcing Napa on the 19th of November at Opus One. It's being launched there. Anyway, enough about the One Block Challenge, because I think it's very exciting. I love hearing Geordie talk about it because he's quite passionate about it. But today we are here to listen to these really, really fantastic speakers. And what I'm so excited about today is that they represent both the cool climate, kind of moist that Fred Loimer is farming in, through to the Mediterranean, kind of very dry that Geordie's farming in, to where Sveva is, which is, she describes as semi-arid. It's incredibly dry there. So Geordie was at Tablas Creek for 10 years. He pioneered regenerative viticulture there. That was the first vineyard in the world to become ROC certified. He's now a consultant sharing that experience. And he's got so much experience, it'd be brilliant to have him talking about that. Sveva is an agronomist, and she is in southern Italy, right in the hill, for those of you who don't know Italy particularly well, in the Alta Murcia, I've pronounced probably incorrectly. She is facing desertification there. So it's incredibly exciting that she's here today to tell us how she is successfully using cover crops, because I know lots of people do have concerns and questions about how you can have cover crops in very, very dry regions because of the competition with water and things like that. Fred has been practicing biodynamics for 20 years and is a founding member of Respect, the certifying body for biodynamic viticulture in Austria. He has the most beautiful photos of cover crops, and I cannot wait to hear about how he's implementing these cover crops in Austria. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time before I move on to other people. So what we want to know is, the ecosystem services provided by cover crops, we know they improve soil structure. We know they protect the soil from high temperatures in a heat spike. We know they improve water infiltration and they retain soil moisture. We know they keep the soil together and decrease erosion. We know they provide habitats for beneficial insects and animal species. We know they increase diversity above and below ground. They provide exudates to feed soil microbes, and they increase carbon sequestration. We know all these things. We've done a literature review at the RVF. There is proper evidence behind all these aspects of cover crops. But the big questions are, how do you actually go about choosing them? buying the seeds, preparing the ground, the timing of when you sow them, how you sow them, how you manage them, whether you terminate them, whether you have to worry about wildfire risk, all these things that these three people are going to answer these questions. Now, specific questions have come from the audience before we've even started. So we've been asked questions about using native species. I'm saying these now because I want our speakers to be thinking about them. They might be able to speak to them in their sections. Native species in irrigated viticulture, dry farming, warm, dry climates, cool climates, semi-dry climates. So we've got all the climates, everyone's represented here. Perennials under vine. Now I'm really interested in that because if we can get perennials growing under vine, then hopefully if they're low growing, we don't need too much manage them, how to get started, what people do wrong, and ship animals. And the most hilarious question, are they worth it? If we didn't think they were worth it, we wouldn't all be here today, would we? So I shall move on. And the first person up is Fred.
Thank you. Sorry to.
So over to Fred.
Yeah. So hello from Austria, and I brought a few pictures from the place, so you have an idea where I am and how it looks like and how our conditions are. And so maybe next, that's the winery. So it's maybe not that. For the cover crop, there's a vineyard too. Here's a map of Austria, a small country, very different climates, and I am in the Kamptal region, so that's west of Vienna, an hour to go, and close to Danube. And it's one of the coldest regions in Austria, in a cool climate country at all. So let's do next slide. It looks like that. So vineyards are on terraces. This little shiny line is our river. Kamp gives the region the name, and it looks like moisture, but it is a very dry region. But maybe next, where we have the major influences in climate. Yeah, so the major influences of Austria at all, but there are three which are influencing us very much. This is one from the east, continental, hot and dry. So talking about the cool climate, but we have days in summer close to 37, 38 in a row, and that chills always down because there's a big influence from the north and west with the chilly air, and especially my region is close to a very cool climate region. So in my region, early frosts, late frosts are always challenging us year by year, and most of the rain we get is from the west, and but we don't have so much. So we only have 500, 550 liters a year, and very dry winters in the meantime. That might be a thing of climate change, and the rains in summer and sometimes in a bad timing. So mildew is one of our big challenges in growing. So let's do next. But yeah, we are not doing everything by horse, just to be clear. So we do a little bit, but very little. But this is a picture because that signs the respect for our main resource we have. And I'm not talking about main resource of vineyards. I'm talking about main resource of human beings, of mankind. That's the soil. And we have to take care about the soil. That's much more. That's the most important thing. And that brings me to that question, cover crop, is it worth it? Yes, of course. This is very, very important. We have to save the soil life. We have to create an environment which gives the soil a chance to stay lively, to create more humus, because that's the most important way to keep your wines growing and healthy. Yeah, next. Soil life was talking about, that's the most complex system in the world. So everything on the world is complex, and there are complex systems, but soil is by far the most complex. So there are billions of life, microorganisms, bacteria, animals living in soil and working in soil. And when you don't protect that, and I mean in that case with green cover, there is a big risk of destroying it. And when you lose carbon, when you lose humus, you lose food for the soil life. And when you get too much heat on the soil surface, then you're again ruining your soil life. But this is what feeds your wines at the end, and that's why we have to take care so much about it. Yeah, next. Yeah, composting, and we can do again next. So in biodynamic, we do, of course, our own composting with own organic material, and this is one of the big things in biodynamic growing, that we have to use the place. So everything what we use should come from our farm or our place, and especially the fertilizer, because it's a question of bacteria and microorganisms, and not so much about chemicals and ingredients what you have at the end in the compost. So it's the bacteria which counts by compost, and that's why we also work with not only compost. We're doing 85 hectares, so it would be far too much material what you have to use. So we manage only 200, 300 tons a year, but we work also, and you see that in the next picture, next slide, with compost tea. And that's a great thing. We do that since 6-7 years now. And you need, of course, already organic material on your soil, so you need cover crop. But then with compost bacteria made in that way, you get really, really great results in the growing, and we see it in the vineyards. We are since years now in a very, very nice balance of our growing. Yeah, let's do next. Yeah, I told you already that, yeah, compost preparates in biodynamic. This is an important way to clean your compost. And also next, you see the steering, but we can go over that and go to the first picture of our cover crops. Yeah. Maybe back to that awareness. Yeah, awareness is maybe one of the most important things in biodynamic, but also in regenerative farming. You have to walk through the vineyards. You have to see what's going on, and you have to be aware and to find your solutions on your place. That's the most important thing. That's why it's so hard to say use this or that seeds. They might work in our area, but they might be not working on your place. So adapt it to the place, species which at your place. These are the plants you should use, and not something you buy from somewhere. It's much better to use things from your place, and this is watching at the end what's growing at my place, and you will find the right plants. Of course, you need for that, not every viticulturist is a specialist on crops and on all different species which are growing somewhere. So always good to have a helping hand, but don't buy something from somewhere. Try to get it very close from your place. So these plants are adapted. They are adapted to your soil. And what we are doing since a few years, you see that a little bit, the different vineyards, of course, but this is what we are doing now is we have already established. So we started not 20 years ago with biodynamic. We started earlier with green cover, but and this might help people who think it doesn't work at their place. Also at my place, there was no green cover 50 years ago. Dry region, I told you already, and all the vineyards were open soil. And then step by step, it started with each second row, and step by step, today you find a lot of vineyards. I would say 95% of all vineyards here in the region are looking like that, and they are covered. And most of the vineyards, not only by seeding, also by natural green cover. That also works, of course, when you take care about diversity at the end. That's one of the problems of green cover, that you drive with big heavy machines. So a tractor has 4 tons, and this is always destroying the herbs, and then prefers the grass coming back. So that's why we created a system where we seed only every 4th row, and so we are coming back every 4 years to do a reseeding, to keep it as much diverse as possible. And with that system, we have almost in every row a different combination of plants. And I think that's important to create diversity, to create as much as possible diversity, because this is feeding the soil at the end. So this is the biggest problem of monoculture, that we have only one plant, and when you have open soil, the soil life get poorer and poorer. It's the same as a microbiome in your body. When you eat only meat and proteins, then your microbiomes get really poor, and you get sick at the end. And the same is here. When you don't care about diversity, you will get a soil which can't serve the nutrients for your vines, and your vines which get poorer and poorer. And we have to take care that we create more resilience at our vines. And this is also one of the big things you get with a healthy soil at the end. So maybe next. Yeah, again, and we can go to the next, but maybe one thing you see it a little bit in the back and also on the right hand side. A big question, I think, in the future is also parcel size. And this is a nice picture now. So we started now to put trees in. No idea so far how we really will do that in the future. This is a trial, and the idea is to make the parcels a little smaller. So you have with that you have more diversity, and you have really a lot of different plants growing then on your parcel. This is again, this is not in my region. Becky mentioned that already. Cool climate, so this is not a question of shadow or something like that. There's still no need so far for that, but it's a question of soil life, to create even more diversity above, because as more diversity you have above, as more diversity you have in your soil. And I think that's one of the big questions at my place, to raise up the resilience of the vines, to get more stable against mildew and other diseases. So let's see what's next. Yeah, no idea so far if Vitiforce is really working for us, but let's see. This is a little bit how we manage the green cover. So we We changed our drilling system completely. So I told you already that we only work with new seedings every fourth row, and we go in autumn with a tractor with a machine. It's called the Green Manager. It undercuts the plants. So it's going on 5 to 7 centimeters and undercuts. And this is the big change, that we are not going deeper in the meantime. So everything what we're doing on the soil is on only 5, maybe 7 centimeters. So the idea is not destroying the structure and the complexity of the soil we already got, and only manage on top. The machine is also great when you do a new seeding. We are working with that machine already, and now with also the seedings. So you can put the seeding machine on that. So it's a direct seeding. So we manage with that way that we never have an open soil, except under the vines, as you see. But under the vines, we only open half a year maybe. So we try to get it clean in autumn, and get it green again in end of June and July. In my place, that's also a question of mineralization, and so we don't get too much, because we get a higher risk of botrytis at the end of the season. So this is also again a question of your place, and not so much how you can do that at all. A new system we did where we need a horse is a double row system. I'm a big fan of high intensity, and that's why we manage the small row with a horse. This is how the machine works, and the result of the machine. So when it really works proper, it looks like that. So you even can't see it, that there was a machine in the row, and in detail it looks like that. So it undercuts. And that would be also a possibility to manage green cover, but only for winter. And we do a little bit with that since 2007. That's a great thing to in already established green cover, to keep the diversity. And because the sheeps, they eating everything, and they eating the seeds too. And with the dung of the sheeps, you get the seeds to a soil contact, and that's why you get a bigger diversity, a better diversity with sheep grazing when you do it not too long. So they should not eat everything there. You have to manage it by time. There are studies of that, how to create diversity with grazing, and this is something we try to use now in the vineyards too. And I think we are through, and open at the end for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Definitely one question from me, and I'm sorry that the slides are taking rather a long time to progress. I hope it's not my internet connection. One question from me is, are you collecting seeds from your own rows to then reseed with? Do you collect your existing seed, or do you get new seed each time?
No, I think that I never thought about that, to be honest, and I think that's far too tricky, far too difficult. So we are happy that we have someone nearby. It's young people from a farm, and they're producing seeds. So our seeds coming from a farm which is 20 kilometers away. Organic certified, so we are in a very, very lucky position, of course, with that. And at the moment we are working with a bunch of differents. The idea is we are not seeding grass. This is anyway coming, but we are seeding crop, clover, herbs, flowers, so many different species. You have then different root systems, different deepness of the roots. I think that's important. But we also see in that bunch of 15 different, not on every soil is coming everything. Almost on every soil is coming only a part of that. Heavier soils bringing more the clover and whatever. So at the end, so after 3-4 years, at the end you have you have a few things in what you seeded, but not everything stays.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And this is what we hear all the time, that people put these seed mixes in and you never quite know what's actually going to germinate, what's going to come up each year. It's actually quite exciting. I have got another question. I'm sorry, I'm hijacking the questions, but because I also live in a cool climate place, cooler than you, I'm in the UK. One of the problems, or one of the questions we get asked, is about frost risk and having cover crops, because some people think that the cover crops can increase the frost risk. Now, I haven't really found any evidence, scientific evidence behind that, but I wondered if you had any experience of frost and cover crops, whether it made any difference or whether you managed things differently.
Yeah, so yes, of course, it could be, but I don't have really see it in a statistic way. So it could be that when the cover crop is too high, so in spring it's growing and maybe you reach then 50-70 centimeters, and then it depends on which high your canopy is. And my vineyards have a very low canopy, so we are working on only 60-70 centimeters, which is which is rare in Kamptal. So here is more stem high of meter, 80 centimeters, meter and 20, where the risk is lower, of course. So we have already a higher risk with the 70 centimeters in some vineyards. What you can do is mowing. So I don't think open soil is the solution, because I talked now 10 minutes about open soil is, I think, not the solution. When you're talking about regenerative viticulture or biodynamic viticulture, it's impossible to do that.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
mowing, mulching is a way. Yeah.
Sorry, there are some questions, and I did hijack the questions, but one is a very good question of someone said, how did you decide to do every fourth row rather than every second row or every third row?
This is the idea of not disturbing too much. So when you do every second row and then you have open soil under your vines, you have then a period in year where you have 70% of your soil open. And when you do that every fourth year, then you lower that percentage of open soil for a short period, because new seeding, then it takes a little time to get it again green covered. So there are 2 months nothing, and that's why we changed that. And at the end, it also is a question of costs. When you do only every fourth row, you lower your costs, of course. You don't need so much energy, and you don't need so much time. And so it's a question of cost. It's a question of not disturbing too much, and all these mixtures of seeds, they need anyway 2 years to be established completely. So the clover need a second year to come, and when you give the clover only a year time for doing his work, that's far too short, I think. So it's much better to extend that time, and that's why every fourth row.
Do you know, Fred, I could ask you questions forever, but we have got 2 other guests here. So I think we might have to stop asking questions and come back to you at the end if we still have some time. There are a couple of questions about how you make your compost, which I'm going to ask you to answer by typing it into the chat, because I think we're going to focus on the cover crops on this talk. Next one might be about compost. We might get you back for that one. But I think so. We're going to move on now to Svev, and we'll come back to you in at the end of the chat. So next up is Svev, who hopefully, and I do apologize if the slides are slow for progressing. Have we got Sveva here?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Becky. Thank you all for having me here. I'm very glad to share my experience with cover crops in Mediterranean vineyards in Morasinsi. Morasinsi is located in south of Italy, in Apulia, in Alta Murgia, which is a semi-arid landscape. From the top of the plateau, as you can see in the picture, you see how dry it is, and during summer, only some bushes survive. We are facing desertification. The average rainfall here is 400, 450 millimeters per year, and it falls normally between October and March. Summers are long and dry, and we now experience with heat waves for several weeks with average summer temperatures around 30 Celsius degrees and peaks above 35, 40 degrees. You can move to the next slide. And here we can see our soil, which are shallows, stony, calcareous from limestone, with a high pH and very low water holding capacity. Next slide, please. Okay. In our agricultural area, soil coverage is not common. Most farmers are afraid of competition between the cover crop and the vine. Personally, I prefer not to talk about competition, but about interaction or shared resources. But yes, our main concern here is water, retaining it, improving infiltration, and keeping the soil alive. So here my focus is how cover crop can work in Mediterranean vineyards like ours by combining spontaneous and perennial species that stay active and functional all year as companion for the vines, especially during summer. At Morasinsi, we have been maintaining spontaneous cover crop for about 10 years. We started with pioneer species only, Conidia canadiensis, Diplotaxis, but now we see a more balanced community with Malva, wild fennel, Calendula, Taraxacum, and we manage them with 3 cuttings per year, alternating the rows, and this creates a thick layer of mulch, as you can see in the pictures. Next. The problem is that this beautiful cover crop during summer dries out, exposing us to wildfire risk, which is always present in our area. So in summer, we have to keep the interrow very short, almost close to zero. On the other hand, we have been focusing on the vine row, trying to identify companion species that can stay green, alive for as long as possible, and maintaining living cover even in the hottest months. Next. I would like to say that we are allowed to irrigate, but the reality is that we cannot afford to irrigate much. We have a drip irrigation, but we limit its use to very specific phenological stages, for example, during flowering, and giving a tiny amount of water. So for this reason, we have to help infiltration and to make sure the soil can retain some moisture. This is one of the main reasons why we decided to keep a cover crop even on the vine row. So also there in the vine row, we follow 2 paths. One has been observing the natural succession. In the photo at the left, for example, you can see almost only Conidia canadiensis. Is a pioneer species, one of the first that grows between desert and land. It has strategies to survive with almost no water at all. At the right, you can see how year by year we started to see secondary plants appear. like, for example, Witania frutescens, which is another Mediterranean desert-like species that can also survive without irrigation. So here you have an example on how we manage a cover crop with only spontaneous species, low input in the row. Next. At the left, you can see Gallium, which is a short cycle species, which appears in spring. It creates a very efficient, beautiful green mulch. And when it dries at the end of its cycle, it leaves a thin protective layer of dry biomass that covers the soil surface. In the center, we even started to see asparagus growing spontaneously in the vine row, which is another sign of ecological succession naturally. On the right, you see how we also use these spontaneous species as part of the farm circular system. Erigeron canadiensis, Diplotaxis erucoides, Sonchus oleraceus are pioneers, are edible, and the last two of them are largely used in local cuisine. So for us, these are also an opportunity for the farm economical sustainability because we can sell them to restaurants. Next.
Oh, I don't know if Sveva has frozen. I thought it was my slides not advancing very quickly. Absolutely amazing photos. So I think we might just have to wait till Sveva comes back. Maybe she lost her connection. I can see Fred is moving, so I'm assuming that it's Sveva, not me. So that Sveva managed to get different plants going there through her vineyard. I think what we might do is actually move on to Geordie as Sveva has lost her connection. So Geordie, I'm just going to jump through the slides and see if we can get to your photos, and then we'll come back to Sveva. Here we go. So Geordie, over to you.
Okay, thank you all for having me. I'm humbled to be in the company of such amazing farmers. My name is Jordan Lomborg. I farm in Paso Robles, California. We are located about 3 hours south of San Francisco, 3 hours north of Los Angeles, right on the coast. We too are in a Mediterranean semi-arid climate, where I had farmed at Talbot Creek, which is about 10 miles from the coast. As a crow flies, we would receive anywhere from, around 25 inches of rain per year, anywhere from October to March, which is in the 650 millimeter range. But as you move inland to, the Paso Robles proper, that rainfall drops significantly. So where one of the ranches I'm currently managing, we're only seeing around 7 inches of rain per year, so 180 millimeters. Temperatures are hot. I mean, during the growing season, we will consistently see 38 degrees Celsius all the way to 43 degrees Celsius. So definitely arid, definitely hot. And it is still an amazing grape growing region, I think, due to the fact that we have these hot, dry, extended periods throughout the growing season. I have worked very closely in all aspects of both conventional sides of farming, where I kind of cut my teeth out of school on 3,000 acres. I had a $5 million pesticide budget, and I would spend every penny. Moved from that position into Talbot Creek, and it was certified organic. In my time there, we ended up certifying the entire property, around 120 acres of grapevines, biodynamic, and then moved later on into a regenerative system. We ran animals. I had a composting program, biochar program, beneficial insectaries, raptor programs, all of the above. I love what you're doing, Fred. Your pictures were, they strike a chord with me in many ways. In terms of cover cropping, I don't think there is anything more important as a farmer that we can do to stimulate soil biology than planting a cover crop. It is a very approachable system that any farmer can really promote and apply on their piece of land. Not everyone has the luxury of incorporating animals. I mean, that is obviously it's a great end goal, but if there's one thing that we can all do as farmers to really promote soil health and biology, that is planting cover crops. When I go onto a piece of ground or to a site, the first thing I do is try to assess that soil type and what is going on under our feet. Are we in a sandy condition? Are we in a loamy condition? Are we in a clay condition? Is it a blend of all three? Really getting an idea or an understanding of what is beneath your feet. From there, it's what am I trying to achieve when I'm planting this cover crop? You can create blends that are focused for what exactly you want your outcome to be. Some people that incorporate animals, their focus is going to be largely based on nutrition for those animals. So you want to give them a cover crop that they are going to both gain nutritional value from and eat. I've found over many, many years that, sheep in particular are very picky. They will eat certain species that they prefer, and you end up creating this imbalance in the system because their sheep are just being picky. They're going for the food that they want. Maybe it's a compaction situation, which is what I'm going to probably talk a little bit more about today. I am on a site right now with serious compaction, very low organic matter, not much microbial activity. And, so I see that and I develop a blend that has tap roots and tuber species, as well as these fibrous systems. Maybe it's a fertility thing. Maybe you have very low fertility in your soils. So if you're going to create your blend, you're going to look more at clovers and legume mixes. Every blend I will ever create and have ever created are highly diverse seed selections. I always, always, always select 4 plant families and anywhere from 12 to 18 different species of plants within those seed mixes. I think that is a critical decision that has to be incorporated into your blend. Diversity is crucial here, and that plays into many, many, many factors. A diverse cover crop blend will cover some bases, right? You don't know how much rain you're going to get that upcoming season. Maybe it's a new piece of land and you haven't farmed that property and you don't understand the actual makeup of the soil type. So some seeds are going to prefer certain soils or whatever the makeup of that soil type is. So it kind of covers bases. You're going to get germination from some of those seed selections across the board. So for plant families, it's very important, right? I want anybody that's listening here thinking about planting a cover crop, always be as diverse as possible. Um, Now, again, objective, like what are you trying to deal with? Is it a compaction, nutrient, animal integration? Bring that thought process into your seed selection or your process. As far as obtaining cover crop seed, in the United States, I think we're lucky. It's a huge swath of land. There's farmers from the west to the east coast that all produce seed. Um, Finding local is always best, I believe. But it's funny. I was looking at Fred's pictures, and a ton of the species that were planted on his ground are exactly the same species that I use in my mixes. So there's the crimson clovers, the Phacelia I saw in there. It looked like he had some daikon, some vetch, some bell beans. So, as far as the United States is concerned, we're a melting pot. I don't know that natives really apply in our situation. I think natives are brilliant to have, but they can be very expensive. Do we want to go back to Sveva and let her finish?
Um, no, I think what we'll do, Geordie, is we'll let you carry on and then we'll go back to Sveva. Okay, I think I'm making an executive decision here. So carry on, Geordie, please.
Okay, so yeah, so sourcing is important though. You want to source from a company that has a good reputation. There are different levels to the quality of seed you can buy, and it is an investment. So if you have an opportunity to source with a seed supplier that has really good reputation, um, I would spend the extra money because it is an important step. It's a costly step. It's a time-consuming step in the system. So investing in that seed from quality sources is really important. I have started to play with inoculants as well. So I think any extra source to help those seeds germinate and germinate successfully are great. Especially, these are all organic inoculants. There are companies in this country that will produce beneficial bacteria inoculants. There's mycorrhizal fungi inoculants, and that definitely strays away from biodynamic principles without a doubt. But I think that the goal of establishing a healthy cover crop is the objective in my mind. You stimulate biology. And I think that's the goal right here is in the regenerative biodynamic system. We are trying to build life in our soil. So anything I can do to promote that cycle, I'm going to try. And a lot of these inoculants are very cheap. One of the companies I'm sourcing seed from this year, I mean, we're putting on a beneficial bacteria inoculant at 80 cents an acre. So it is a nominal cost in the grand scheme of the process.
Geordie, we've got a
Um,
question. Sorry, I'm interrupting you because we've had a couple of questions that are very similar. I don't want to
okay.
interrupt your flow too much, but you can take a drink of water while I ask the question. People want to know the practicalities of sowing so many different types of seeds. So if you've got 18 different types of seeds, presumably they're different sizes. Do they want to go at different depths? Do you put them all in one big hopper and do a direct drill? How do you sow those seeds?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I understand that question completely. And I think the rule of thumb when you're sowing seed is you want that seed to be maybe double the distance under the ground. right? So if we're talking about a millimeter, a seed that's a millimeter in length, you want to plant it 2 millimeters down. Well, there is not that much variability when you're talking about, I mean, it is minimal when you're talking about these seed mixes. So I've had great success even just broadcasting seed onto ground. I've seen uh, bell bean seeds that are barely covered in soil push roots and establish themselves. So I would not be too concerned with the depth at which you're planting. I think that the important part is that you're planting. Now, if you have access to specific equipment, that's great. It will probably ensure a better take or a more consistent take. But I don't lose myself in the application method as much. Um, this year, I'm using it's basically a grain drill. Very, very straightforward implement. It's got a hopper. It has, you're able to dial in the pounds per acre, and then very simple coulters where that seed feeds through the tubes and into the coulters, and it's sowed at very, very shallow depth. I've had great experience with um, the no-till drills. Oh my gosh, I'm about to lose power here. The no-till drills in a no-till system, but those are really expensive, and that is it. That's a huge investment, even to rent. So I I wouldn't be super concerned with the application method. I think you can have great success with many different tools. Um, as far as soil prep for seedbed planting, now this is a tough one. This is always this can mean so many different things for so many different properties. If your property or your piece of land does not have much compaction, say it's high in organic matter, say there's a lot of leaf litter on the ground, there's very little prep that you may need to do. This could be as simple as running tools like Perfectas, where you're basically just scraping the surface. Or if you have access to a seed drill, uh, a no-till drill, and you can run that over this ground that's not compacted and it has a lot of organic matter, maybe even some leaf litter or grasses from the previous season, just enough to cover that seed, it can be really effective. If you're dealing with severely compacted ground with low organic matter, uh, low fertility, I open that ground up. Now I farm mainly on clay loam soils. There's heavy clay sandy soils that I'm actually farming on right now. I don't farm in pure sand, so this could be a completely different objective for those of you out there that have, sand dominant soils. Have the luxury of clay, and clay is an amazing thing. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy, depending on compaction. And the site that I'm on right now, there's quite a bit of clay and there's a little bit of sand in there, but due to previous vineyard management practices over the last 15 or 20 years, that soil and ground is severely compacted. So I made a drastic decision this year, and I opened that ground up. Sometimes I believe that you need to break things down to start over. It is not my go-to method by any means, but it is, I think, a necessary step in order to kickstart that biology and to really get fibrous root systems and taproot systems and all of the things established in order to move forward. So I was out there this year. I was running a chisel plow. that probably was 8 to 12 inches deep on every row. We followed it up with a tandem disc set on an aggressive angle to break up the clods that were created while we were running that chisel plow. And then then after that, once we created this beautiful seed bed, I know that after I run my seeder through there, everything is going to have a chance to come up. Had I not taken those steps, I fear that very few of the seeds that I would have been planting would have germinated successfully. So there are extreme cases where if this is a direction that you're moving in terms of regenerative systems or maybe even biodynamic, and this is a new piece of ground, it might be critical for you to take a drastic step. And I think the best way of finding out whether or not that's the case is you bring a shovel out into that field. You know, it could be viewed as one of the best pieces of fertilizer out there is a farmer's footprints and a shovel in his hand. So, I was digging around in March of last year and I could barely sink that shovel into the ground after our rainy season. So I was at that point, I knew that this coming fall, which is right now, that I had to make a drastic call. Will that decision be made next year? We'll find out. I doubt it. I hope not. But again, I never rule anything out until it's right in front of me.
Geordie, we're going to have to interrupt you, I'm afraid, because Sverva is back, as we know, and we've already got up to 6 o'clock. So we're going to have to go over to Sverva, and then I think we'll come back because we've not actually managed to really talk about the managing of the cover crops later on in the season. But we'll do that. We're going to try and come back to you, but I want to make sure that Sverva gets a chance to finish what she was talking about. So I'm just going back to. This is where we were with the presentation. So sorry to interrupt. You can get your hydration back and then Sverva can carry on. Sverva, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry I had problem with connection and I'm very sorry for having lost the first part of the speech of Jordan. Yes, thank you. This was the part. I was talking about the two paths. We started at Morasinsi with cover crop on the row. So I talked about the spontaneous one, observing natural succession. Then on the other side, we also started to design mixed perennial layers, focusing on aromatic species. For us, aromatics are the key to keeping the soil alive during summer. They slow down their growth when it's extremely hot, but they stay alive, maintaining a living root system and microhabitat under the canopy. So on the left, you can see a consortia of Vinca major together with spontaneous and Thymus vulgaris and Santolina cameciparis. On the right, there's Pampanuto, which is a local grape variety, with Helichrysum italicum, which is a local aromatic. So we managed these perennials with a hedge trimmer just to shade them and maintain the right height. Aromatics also attracts pollinators. They provide a living green layer even in the summer. They use water efficiently, they create diffuse humidity, and they help to maintain a cooler microclimate around the vines. In the next slide, yes, here you can see 3 examples of perennial consortia we are testing. On the left, you can see Nero di Troia, another native grape variety, together with Rosmarinus officinalis. Rosmarinus gives an excellent coverage. It attracts pollinators and responds very well to pruning. In the middle, there's a low maintenance consortium, a mix of Santolina and Thymus. They require just 1 cutting per year. They stay compact and they keep the soil underneath very fresh. Santolina in particular creates a beautiful, cool microenvironment. On the right, Coronilla valentina, a legume that also fixes nitrogens, and it also responds very well to cuttings. These are three combinations we are currently testing to identify which ones works best under our conditions. Next slide, please. Yes, I would say that cover crops at Morasinsi are part of a broader approach. They work together with our agroforestry project, where we integrate also emerging trees within the vineyard. So at the left, you have an example of spontaneous Thymus vulgaris in our kinds of soil developing very well. And at the right, an example of our agroforestry project, where integrate cover crop together with bushes, broom, for example, and emergent trees. We were also looking for a cost-effective techniques, and spontaneous vegetation has been for us a great tool for that, helping us to keep the soil covered, retain water, and maintain biological activity with very low input. Local and pioneer for us are very efficient in using water and adapting to stress. And especially now in a period when wine market faces challenges, for small producer, these approaches helps us to stay both environmentally and economically resilient. That's all.
Thank you, Sveva. I'm so sorry that your presentation was broken partway through, because I think it's been absolutely fascinating. So someone has asked about whether the aromatic crops influence the aromatic profile of the wine. And I know I have heard that before, that people are concerned about that. Someone's written that that's well documented in Provence in France, and also with eucalyptus. Have you noticed that at all? Is there any?
Yes, in my experience, they do not influence aromas in the wine at all. Also because we know that aromas, where does the aromas come from? Yes, I've also read about this research about eucalyptus, but I have to say, I also have eucalyptus. I have to say that if I read correctly, this eucalyptus was Eucalyptus globulus, which is the one that is normally used to produce essential oils. In my agroforestry project, I use, for example, Eucalyptus camaldulensis and Eucalyptus gunni, so they do not have so much essential oil. And Eucalyptus globulus, yes, you can feel from 20 meters, it's very perfumed. I mean, it's used for essential oils. But from aromatics, rosmarinus, and santolina, I didn't see any aromas in wine.
That's great. So go,
I have
Jordan.
a comment. I have a comment on that. I have the property that I live on and caretake has been no-till now for close to 20 years, and we have an excellent stand of some native plants. It's a Medea, a night flower. It's also known as tarweed. And then chamomile as well, a native chamomile. And I have had, it's probably varietal dependent, but one of the winemakers that purchases Pinot Noir from our property year after year, and I've not really told him much about these native plants, but he always, always, always has this comment of the Pinot having these tea characteristics, which I kind of down, knowing how much chamomile is growing on our property. So I would suspect, I think it's very varietal dependent. I mean, maybe there are some grape species or skins that absorb more so than others. And at the end of the day, I call that terroir. I mean, that's what makes your property special. So if these grapes do pick up those characteristics, then there's your sense of place.
I totally agree
So
with you, Jordan. Completely.
yeah,
I personally never felt some influence on the aroma from the aromatics, but yes, if it would appear, I completely agree. This is part of your farm. This is part of the farm's terroir. At the end, terroir, I think, is just this.
yes, yes, very much so. Um, so I guess like getting into the termination, like with animal integration, for me, I think there's always been this misconception that animals are weed control, or even fertilizer. But the reality is the manure an animal drops, and actually, the majority of the fertilizer component or nitrogen would be coming from their urine. And that's being laid down on the ground at a time when grapevine root systems aren't very active at the surface level of the soil. We all know that, 1 or 2 or 3 feet underground, they're experiencing uh, um, amazing root flushes during those winter months. But the grapes themselves, those vines, aren't capitalizing off of that manure or that urine. What animals do are bringing microbiology to the system. That's where that rooming comes into play. They're bringing um, all the microbial activity that I think we in this regenerative or biodynamic space are so focused on bringing to the system. Most importantly, what they're doing as they move through a cover crop system, they're stimulating the root systems of that cover crop. So, after 10 years at Topless and running herds up to 300 animals deep, what we learned is the rapid movements are hands down the most beneficial. We would never let these animals, or we would try to move them through these blocks after 24 hours. And the value that it was not on a fertility uh, um, mindset. This was a stimulation. They were stimulating this root crop, this cover crop, thus resulting in this flush of a root system from your plants that you had growing in between the vines. That's where they came into play for us. Now, when we get into those later months, as far as termination was concerned, that all depended on the size of the cover crop. So we played with roller crimping. I think roller crimping is a fantastic tool in an older vineyard. You need to be very careful crimping cover crop in a young vineyard, because it does, if you're leaving this thatch layer, you're also promoting habitat for our 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 rodents, which I don't know that you guys have to deal with pocket gophers or ground squirrels in Europe, and you're very lucky that you don't. But in the United States, our burrowing friends can be pretty destructive. If you don't have the roller crimper, if you don't have the animals, I think whatever implement you use to terminate, leaving the most biomass as much as possible is critical here. So there are two different mowing systems that we kind of use in this country. There's a flail mower, which is really aggressive. It's kind of designed to sit on the ground and chop up anything in front of it, whether that's grapevine canes or the cover crop you're terminating. I have moved far away from flail mowers and really only use rotary mowers. So a rotary mower is just one blade that's spinning. We try and set those decks as high as possible, and you really are just cutting those plants right at the base and laying down that cover crop as much as possible, leaving as much biomass as possible. And I mean, that's important. I let my cover crops go as long as possible. I like to see them seed out. I think they bring in, once they start flowering, you're talking about the beneficial insects that they attract and bring into your system. So as long as the crews that are working in my vineyards aren't complaining, I let those things grow, 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 grow. Do you have any comments on termination, Fred or Spiva?
Yes, as I was saying, we manage the termination with the machines that we have. So it's we also have to take this in count. So the availability of the machine. So at the moment we have a shredder, and for the spontaneous cover crop is really good. I mean, we leave them grow very tall, and then we cut them in order to have the much as biomass as possible. And for the row, under the row, with the hedge trimmer, the same. So especially for Coronilla Valentina, it has a lot of biomass. So keeping at 40 centimeters, for example, we cut at 40 centimeters, and or in specific stages before flowering, for example, leaving a lot of biomass in the soil, on the soil.
We haven't got very long, I'm afraid. In fact, we are almost 20 minutes over the time we were supposed to be, but this is so fascinating. And I really want to go back to Fred, because Fred has been very busy answering questions in the chat, which is absolutely fantastic. But I wondered if Fred had some advice for people who were just thinking about setting out with cover crops, because several of the questions in the chat seem to be people who are worried about starting. They are wondering if they need to somehow get rid of the plants that are already growing there. There have been questions about herbicide. And I think people are concerned about how to get started. Do you have any advice for them, Fred?
Yeah, first of all, herbicides is not a good idea. So herbicides are killers. They're killing life, and they're in big discussions. And when we talk about organic or biodynamic, it's anyway forbidden. And when we talk about regenerative farming, it's a no-go. You can't work with that. And there's no reason to get rid of all the herbs which are already growing, even when they don't look nice or whatever. So let them grow, mow them or whatever. They are the beginning. So soil is a very intelligent system. An open soil always know what to do to get green covered, and it always starts with some herbs and weeds which you normally don't like, and you would normally take them out, but maybe they can help to shadow the soil, and then bring space for nicer, better herbs which you need more for your soil. But this is the soil doing by itself. Sveva talked very much about natural green cover. This is the easiest way to get green cover. And at the beginning, you always have to be careful, of course, when when there is a vineyard which haven't seen greens except the vines over decades, then you have to be, of course, careful. The soil is poor, and you have to do that step by step. And a simple system is start every second row, start it seeding in autumn, control it in spring, maybe take it away in summer or whatever. So when you see competition, then you control it by mowing or by disturbing it with a machine only on the surface, whatever. The thing is, I think we should stop plowing or whatever, so going deep. That destroys structure. Plants doing that much better as a machine and cheaper. but of course, at the beginning, carefully, step by step, creating that it gets greener and greener. And I think after a while, and maybe at the beginning you are lucky, you have rainfall at the right time, then it goes quicker. When you pick a dry period, a dry year, or maybe a row of dry years, then it's slowlier. But I think on every place where wines are growing, you will succeed at the end. There will be a nice, lively environment at the end.
Thank you. That's wonderful. So I think I'm going to try to wrap it up. So I was just wondering, Fred,
I
if there
think
was
Jody
anything.
would like to.
Oh, sorry.
Just one thing we didn't really chat about is timing of planting. And this is obvious. This is like for me the most critical thing. In my part of the world, and especially in a zone that may only see 180 millimeters of rain per year, 7 inches. I do everything within my power to plant my seed before the first rain of the year. Do not wait. I don't wait. I do not wait until we have an inch or two. I do everything within my power to get that seed in the ground because you don't know. It could continue to rain for the rest of the winter and you're not able to get your tractors back in, or you'll be destructive in that process. It can be really hard in the grape world because we know that harvest is pushing right up to that rainy season. But for me, I am always thinking about, months in advance, the steps I need to take to get my cover crop planted before that first rain.
Thank you. That's brilliant. I think we've got time for a last comment from anybody who wants to make one. Sveva, is there anything you would like to say to people before we finish up?
Yes, I mean, I talked a lot about spontaneous cover crop. This is what I'm doing in Morasinsi, and observing the natural succession. So, starting from zero, you can also start step by step, observing what nature in your place does. I mean, bare soil is not natural, so plants will cover the soil in order to protect him. Then you can call them weeds, you can call them spontaneous, but at least start.
Yeah, lovely. I mean, I think we've had, almost an hour and a half of people's time. And what I've taken away from today is that you three are farming in very different ways. You're all insisting on keeping that soil covered with as diverse cover crops as you possibly can. Sveva, you're doing this in a place where you are looking very carefully at the plants that are growing there and encouraging succession, which is just fantastic with so little rain. Jordan, you're adapting to all your clients' different vineyard contexts and finding ways for them to have cover crops, even if that means going back and really ripping that soil to start with, if you feel that's really necessary. Fred has got another different approach where he's very much about using the different depths of the cover crops to try and get rid of that compaction. But I think what you're all doing is absolutely inspiring. I mean, it's incredible what you're doing. And to have shared that with everybody is very generous of you and really wonderful. So if does anybody want to say anything else before we go?
Maybe because I read about that yesterday. There is a great project starting end of 70s in Egypt, Sechem. It's the biggest biodynamic farm, I guess, in the world, 4,000 hectares in a desert. And today it's a green blooming oasis. So it's possible. It's everywhere possible. But of course, sometimes it's work and you need time and knowledge. But it's possible and it's important. It's very important. I read by Sveva that they are worried about desertification. There's only one way to stop that, and that's green covering the soil.
Thank you. Um, This is excellent. And it brings me back to what I started talking about, which was our one block challenge. As there does seem to be quite a lot of uncertainty in people who seem keen to try cover crops, then what I'm hoping is that as we roll out our one block challenges to more wine regions, we're going to give more and more people the opportunity to come together, to share experiences, to have people like Geordie, hopefully, as a peer in those groups who can help them with their first steps or their next steps in cover crops. So I think thank you hugely. There are still some outstanding questions. I'm sorry we couldn't answer them all. This has been the most fascinating webinar. I mean, really, thank you so, so much. Time to say goodbye, and I think hand over to the Porto Protocol.
I think all has been said. We were postponing this more and more, Becky. We were speaking amongst ourselves because it is otherwise a lot of knowledge would have been lost. So thank you all that stood there. You can rewatch it on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you again, Fred, Sveva, and Jordan, for being here and for delivering so much knowledge and experience above all. And thank you, Becky. As always, we love, again, also working with you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.